Okay, I think we'll get started. Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm the product manager for Labkey Sample Manager, Hannah Brackey, and will be leading this webinar. So as I mentioned, I'm one of the product managers here at Labkey, but prior to working here, I was a bench scientist for nearly 10 years. I worked in academia as well as nonprofits, primarily as an immunologist and data scientist. As someone who started out dissecting mosquitoes for malaria research and then collecting samples from different animal models and developing a program that received and processed human samples from phase 1 immunotherapy clinical trials, I've had my fair share of sample collection, processing, and analysis in the lab. When I joined Labkey, I was asked to share my experience with our team to help Labkey create and launch a new product, Sample Manager. So for me, getting to be a vital part in designing a software solution that will actually help scientists perform work rather than hinder it has been a really exciting journey, and I'm excited to share it with you today. I'm going to start with a little bit of background. As some of you may know, Labkey has been building software for scientific data management needs for over 15 years. We started out as a proteomics data management tool at the Fred Hutch in Seattle. After a couple of years, the founders of Labkey understood how important it would be to create a standalone platform that would continue to grow and be supported long-term. They continued expanding by creating a scalable, centralized data management tool for the SHARP consortium, capturing and integrating study data. Labkey then continued to improve the study module for ITN by providing the ability to publish and share de-identified clinical trial data. During this time, Labkey started supporting other scientific data types such as flow cytometry, NAB, Luminex, and other assays. In 2015, we were contracted to expand functionality for the 100,000 Genomes Project to aggregate and secure clinical data gathered from multiple sites in the UK. In partnership with the O'Connor Lab at the University of Wisconsin, we began hosting a public portal for real-time data sharing during the Zika virus outbreak to improve data accessibility. We then launched our large molecule biologics development product with Just Biotherapeutics. And about 2 years ago, we started to investigate options for developing a new product that would serve both current and prospective clients, Labkey Sample Manager. So as you've heard and as you can see here, we partner with a large variety of groups across scientific disciplines, which conveys the flexibility of our platform overall. So we started our investigation for Sample Manager in 2018 and found that although there are many sample management solutions out there, current products tended to be hard to use, difficult to deploy and administer, lacked modern interfaces, and were cost prohibitive either at the time of purchase for enterprise level softwares or after adoption when groups were trying to scale. So as a scientist who works at a company that has a mission of helping teams overcome laboratory data management challenges, we were determined to create a product that did better. Something that focused on increasing efficiency in the lab, was easy to use, and had a low administrative and cost burden on our clients. Labkey Sample Manager is a cloud-based, built-to-purpose product designed to bring greater efficiency to sample processing while providing a unified view of your samples and data. To make the best product possible that was broadly applicable across scientific disciplines, we created a Sample Manager Product Advisory Council to help guide our decisions. Over a year later, these scientists continue to be highly engaged and provide sincere, valuable feedback about both the current functionality as well as the upcoming features. So there are 3 key feature areas that we have developed for this product. Sample definition or registration in the system, being able to connect experimental assay data to these registered samples, and assigning samples to a workflow job. By having all 3 of these tools in Sample Manager, the application can provide a single place for scientists, lab managers, and other team members to view processes and generated data associated with their samples. So now I'm going to go through each of these features one by one. Our first topic is sample definition. Creating a centralized resource to define samples can boost efficiency and overall data integrity in the lab. Sample Manager allows for multiple methods of sample creation to fit the needs of your lab. Scientists can create a new sample by adding in the row manually, using our bulk create feature, or by uploading a sample manifest or other tabular file to register many samples at once. Sample Manager enforces a uniqueness constraint on sample IDs to help ensure that samples are distinct, avoiding downstream confusion about a sample. It also helps save time during the registration process by automatically generating unique sample IDs using our naming pattern tool. In order to understand the context of how a sample was generated, Sample Manager also provides a mechanism to capture the lineage or hierarchy of samples. For example, if you receive a sample in the lab and immediately aliquot or process it, you can capture the original sample as well as the samples that have been derived from it. Additionally, scientists can quickly evaluate and interrogate the lineage graph to view how a sample was generated. Connecting assay data to samples is our second key feature and one that I believe brings something new to sample management software. To provide scientists with a comprehensive view of samples and their associated data, tabular assay data generated from samples can be uploaded into Sample Manager. Scientists can easily track and view what assay data has been created from a sample, decreasing the chance of running an experiment again and also providing them with access to that previous data. Once multiple assay experiments of the same type are uploaded, Sample Manager automatically compiles this data into a single table, providing an easy mechanism for scientists to compare data across runs. Creating an application that was going to help scientists do their work was really important to our team, which is why we decided to create a task-based workflow tool. This tool allows managers and scientists to capture their lab procedures transparently, track their work quickly using job queues, and enhances collaboration through our notification and comment features. In Sample Manager, a workflow job is comprised of a set of defined tasks that are associated with a set of samples. Team members can create workflow jobs and assign tasks and due dates to scientists, providing a sense of collaboration and accountability in the lab. Jobs will also capture comments and support file upload for further customization and information about what happened during the job. Managers and teams can track the status of jobs and tasks, ensuring the right work is getting done at the right time. Workflow jobs will also show teams the samples and assay results related to that job, giving full transparency into the work. Scientists can always create an ad hoc workflow job to capture a given workflow, but for more standardized lab procedures, managers and other administrators can create workflow templates for teams to reuse. So although we haven't called it out as a feature in Sample Manager, customizing the samples, assays, and workflow templates for your lab is important to making the application relevant for you and your team. Lab managers or other administrators can set up Sample Manager to capture the data that is most relevant for their labs. This includes customizing the fields captured in different sample types and experimental assay designs, as well as creating defined tasks and workflow templates. All of these data types follow a similar design interface, making administration easy to learn and adopt. In each of these designers, managers can enforce the data type of each field, as well as determining what fields are required versus optional. Scientists and team members can also be assigned one of three roles: reader, editor, or administrator. Readers obviously have the most restricted role where they can only view the data in Sample Manager. Editors will be able to add, delete, and update samples, assay runs, and workflow jobs. And administrators have the most permissions with the ability to manage team members and define the structure of sample types, assay designs, and workflow jobs. They will also have the ability to view the audit log. Labkey Sample Manager has been built for labs operating in 21 CFR Part 11 compliant environments. With password-protected login, defined permissions roles, and detailed auditing of records, it is easy to track what was performed when by which team member. By using Sample Manager in conjunction with good laboratory practices, it will be easy to track and maintain good records in the case of an audit. So now that you've heard about how Sample Manager can help in your lab, it's time that I show you in our live demo. So for this today, I'm going to pretend that I'm back in the lab, responsible for receiving our blood samples and generating the necessary data associated with those samples. So in this pretend lab, after the blood is received, we'll want to analyze the samples for complete blood count, chemistry, and nutrients, and upload that associated data. So I'm going to hop in to our live demo here. And so you can see when a user first enters the application, they'll see the Sample Manager dashboard that portrays what is happening in the lab. From this dashboard, users can quickly see what samples or assays have been created, create or import new samples or assay data, and view their workflow job queue. So if we inspect each of these panels separately, we have this dashboard insights, which gives me an overview of the types of samples that I have registered in my system, as well as the count. I can view this over all time, or toggle through and view what I've done in the last year, in the last month, in the last week, and then today. And clearly I haven't done a lot of work in the last couple of weeks, but normally a functional lab would see these a little bit differently. I can also choose to create samples here or change this view so I can see what type of assay data has been uploaded into this as well. Another way to look at my assay data is in this bottom panel for recent assay data, where it'll show me the most recent assay data that I've uploaded, as well as being able to drill into the specific assay types that I have here. So if we look at the CBC data, we can see the most recent CBC assay runs that I've uploaded, as well as being able to import a run directly from this interface. We also have a jobs panel that gives me my queue of work here. I can filter by priority level if I want to only look at urgent things or possibly the high priority things. I can look at those. I can also view all of the active jobs that are happening in the lab right now, regardless of if they've been assigned to me, or I can actually start a new job from here. We also have the navigation menu at the top, which stays with you throughout the application to provide easy navigation for users as they're navigating through the app. So if we look at this menu, we have our sample types and all of the different ones, as well as the assays, the workflow, and some administration and profile setting options. For each of these high-level features, we have a grid view that sort of summarizes what types of sample types have been created, and we can see here I have about 6 or so sample types, when they were created, and what that sample count is again. I can also create a new sample type. So if we deviate from my virtual lab for a second and say I'm not generating animal or human-derived samples, but perhaps I create a new sample where I'm collecting dirt samples, I can add this as my webinar demo. And maybe all of the samples that I create in this dirt sample should be named dirt with the date that I've registered them and then the daily sample count. And I can save this. And then I can customize the fields for my dirt samples. So rather than things like volume and an ID, I might be able to add things like I want a mass, the units, and the date collected here. And then for each of these fields, I can also customize the data type and say that maybe this is sort of the mass is going to be a numeric type, the units will keep as text, and then the date will want obviously to be a date time field. I can also choose to set any of these fields as required, or if I expand the functionality, we have a lot of other options that will allow you to customize this even further. For now, I'll save this off. And I can start to add my dirt samples as I receive them into the lab. And sort of speaking of that, we'll go back to my lab scenario today where we want to look at the blood sample types. And for each of these, we can see all of the customized fields that I have created for this blood sample type. I can navigate through the page and view them. I can filter and sort. Or I could go directly into a blood sample and sort of view that specifically. So this is our sample details view where it gives me the name, perhaps the description of a sample, all of the metadata that we have customized and entered for this sample type into the system. So I can see that this blood sample was part of Project X. I was the person who received it. It was fairly normal when it came in, and we got it from Lab B. I can also look at the lineage of this sample and see if there were other samples that have been derived from it. And it looks like there has. There's 2 plasma samples, and this right-hand panel is getting updated as I'm navigating through this lineage page. We also have PBMC samples that have been generated, and then DNA samples generated from there. And so if I wanted to interrogate this further, I can start navigating through and redefining my lineage and using this as a mechanism to really see the full context of my sample and what has been generated from it. I can also view the assays that have been associated with this sample. And so we can see that there are 3 different assays, the CBC, chem, and nutrients assays that have data associated with this sample. I can choose to import data here as well if I have it. And lastly, I can view the workflow jobs that are associated with this sample. So it looks like there are 2 workflow jobs in progress. With relatively high priority, although that's kind of funny since our due date is not until next year. But it just sort of gives you an overview, an overall sense of what is being done to this sample at a given time. So if we go back to the blood grid view, I'll actually want to create samples today. And so we can look at my blood manifest that I've received. And I'll want to upload this manifest into the application. You can see that my project here is filled out as my demo. And so what I actually want to do is make sure maybe somebody in the lab didn't do my work for me. And so I'm just going to filter my grid on project is my demo. And it looks like there's no samples that have been uploaded. And so I'm sort of free to continue on creating these samples. So from here, I'm going to create more blood samples. I can create them through the grid if I just have a couple or if I don't have a sample manifest. But in this case, I'm going to import the samples from the file. I can drag and drop them, or I can just select here and have it navigate to where my manifest lives. Sample Manager is also going to give me a preview of my blood manifest file, and I can confirm that this is the file that I want to select, and these are the samples I want to import. Select import here, and it will let me know that I've created these 20 samples. So some of you may have noticed that my manifest wasn't completely filled out. I didn't have a receive date or a receiving operator here. I could choose to go back and edit my manifest and re-upload these samples. But in this case, I'm actually going to use our bulk edit feature. I'm going to select these 20 samples, manage, and then edit samples in bulk. And this gives me a view of all of the data associated with those 20 samples. And I can check that I want to enable changing my receive date to today. And then I want the receiving operator to be myself. And as I update these samples, the rest of the data stays the same while adding these additional fields to the data as well. So my next task in my scenario was to be able to add these samples to a workflow job. Again, I could sort of filter down and select. I can select a couple here. Since I know it's just these first 20 on this page, I'm going to select all of them. Go to jobs. And I'm going to actually start a job with these selected samples. There are two ways to have a workflow job. I can create an ad hoc job where I'm defining the tasks as I'm working through this workflow, or I can choose a job template that an administrator defined for me. And so today I'm going to use the job template. And I'm going to assign it to the template of performing the blood analysis. I can choose a job name here. Maybe I'll call it my webinar demo. Add a description. Define where these samples are going to be located. So if I'm assigning work to other people, they know where to look for these samples. So maybe I'm starting out with them sitting on our receiving bench, and then at the end, I want them to end up in the -80 or somewhere else. I can assign myself as the job owner. And then notify users as well. So if I have a boss or a collaborator that is interested in this work that I'm doing, I can add them in. And so here I'm just going to add Will, so he knows what I'm doing in the lab with some start and due dates. So I might start this today, and maybe we'll give folks a day or so to get this work done. I can also then set the priority level so people can evaluate what work needs to be done first if they have a lot of jobs with the same due date, for example. In this case, we'll just stick with something like medium. Because I started this job from a defined template, my tasks and assays associated with them are pre-created and locked, so I can't change these. And I can also assign this work now to myself or other people in the lab. And so we'll pretend that I actually did this receipt when I did the registration of the samples, and then I'm going to assign the rest of my work to Rob because he's the person that usually takes care of this kind of thing. We can expand this and see the samples that I've actually assigned to this job. And if I have files like SOPs, maybe pictures of a broken tube or something else, I can add that here to give more context to the people that I'm working with on what this job entails. If I finish creating the job, we now have this job overview page where we can view and change all of the metadata that I've associated with it here. So if we need to change the priority, or the due date or something like that, we can do that. I can also complete the current task on this job progress and assignments panel, or I can drill in specifically on a task and view the details of this task. And so maybe I want to assign it to somebody else, or just leave a comment that, you know, I did this during my demo. Again, giving more context to people that I'm working with on the work that I've done in the lab. If I complete this task, we'll automatically be popped into the next task where we can see that Rob is the job owner, or is the task owner, excuse me. And so just for the sake of the demo, I'm actually going to now show a view where I'm pretending to be Rob, so you guys can see what this might look like on his side. And if I refresh this page here, we'll be able to see that Rob now has a new job in his queue that is my webinar demo. I can navigate into that and see that I've got some work to do, or that Rob's got some work to do. And so if we complete this current task, it'll mark that task as complete and then say, okay, now we have some CBC assay data to upload. I can drill into that task specifically. And before I complete it, I'm actually going to want to import this data. Again, if I want the system to have an assay ID defined for me, I can, or I can type in my own if I have my own assay identification nomenclature. These run level fields are fields that apply to every row that I'm going to be uploading. So all of the work here was performed by Rob. It was performed on instrument 2, and it was performed today. Again, I can upload files, enter it into a grid, or copy and paste from an Excel file. I already have a file generated, so I'm just going to select that file here. Sample Manager is going to give me a preview of this file again, make sure that this is the file that I wanted. It looks correct, and so I'm going to select Import. And because I've done this a few times, Labkey is going to just let me know that, hey, you've uploaded this file before. Are you sure you want to do this? And if you do, we're going to rename it to something else. And I'm okay with that. So we're going to import and rename. Now we can view this run and all of the results associated with that run. You'll see that we have links to all of the registered samples in the system. I can go through and evaluate all of the different runs that have been imported over time, or I can actually select all of the different results, and we can see that we've got about 5,000 results here. I can use my filtering and sorting to maybe only look at white blood cell counts that are greater than 6,000. And even add, maybe I'm only interested in myself as sort of the operator. I can then export this data for downstream analysis or reporting as needed. And from here, we'll just switch back to the work that I was meant to be doing. So we'll leave Rob's page. We'll go back into mine. And if I refresh this page, we'll be able to see that Rob has uploaded some data. He's completed some tasks. If I go to the assays now associated with this job, I can view the assay data that Rob just uploaded. And so as you've seen, the 3 key components of Labkey Sample Manager have been built out to enable sample definition and capturing lineage, assay upload, and assigning samples to a workflow job. Sample Manager is available for purchase with our early adopter pricing. And as with all Labkey offerings, this includes unlimited user seats and online support services. This product will standardly come hosted by Labkey, eliminating the need for internal IT support. And because we're hosting, we'll also take care of regular maintenance and updates to ensure that you're getting the latest features. In the coming months, we plan to build out several new features to enhance Sample Manager even further. Sources will create a top level of hierarchy that will allow groups to define information about the origin of their samples. So this could be labs as origins, patients as origins, mice as origins, that type of thing. Controlled vocabulary will enable the definition of common language for users so data can be easily searched and matched. And our freezer management solution will link to registered samples and allow users to follow them more completely throughout the laboratory lifecycle. There are a lot of more features and functionality to come, and our team is really excited to learn from you and hear what's important to your team. As you saw in the beginning, Labkey prefers to listen to scientists' needs rather than dictate them, and so we're eager to continue growing this product with partnership and feedback from you. If you're interested in learning more about Labkey Sample Manager, keep an eye out on your inbox. We'll send you a link to explore Sample Manager as you saw today, as well as a link to schedule a meeting with our team and a copy of this webinar recording. You can also visit labkey.com and sign up for instant access to test out Sample Manager or contact us for more information. And so with that, we will jump into any questions that people may have. So it looks like there's a question of, is this specimen ID that is assigned by the system just unique to one lab? And the answer is that if the one lab is using this system, then yes, it would be unique to the lab that's using Sample Manager. If there are multiple labs using Sample Manager, the ID will be unique, as long as it's hosted in the same environment and the same database. Another question we've got is, what happens if you try and import a file that has a column name that doesn't match? So currently the functionality is that Sample Manager will ignore that. We're hoping that our preview file preview feature will be able to sort of let users evaluate that file before they import it, but currently it will just ignore it unless it's a required field, in which case Sample Manager will say you don't have any data or this field isn't defined, and so it'll give you a bit of a clue there. Another question, how does the user know what columns are to be considered added in the Excel for bulk import? So we actually have a really handy download template feature. So as you are going through Sample Manager and want to do a bulk import, on every page that a bulk import is available, we provide a template for users so they know what fields need to be filled out. Another question, are we able to create and define assays themselves through Sample Manager, or is there a tool used to connect already created assays to samples? So I'll sort of answer the first part. I'm not sure totally on the second part, but maybe this user can clarify. So the first one, in terms of creating and defining assays themselves through Sample Manager, that's absolutely the case. And so as I went through that UI when I created the DIRT sample type, it's a very similar UI to when you would want to create a new assay design. And of course, that is done by an administrator, and so you would have somebody sort of thoughtfully go through and define that assay type. And so another question is, are there predefined templates? There are no predefined templates in Sample Manager. We really want users to be able to create the templates that they need for their lab. And of course, if you need assistance in what that might be, we have a lot of sort of this demo data available for folks to take a look at, and then of course getting help through our support portal as well. Another question, will Sample Manager communicate with Labkey's other products? For example, Panorama. So this is somebody who's already using Labkey, for example. It will communicate with Labkey Server if this group is already using Labkey Server and is using a premium edition. And I haven't gone into a lot of detail here, but definitely I would say please reach out to me and we can talk about how that integration might work. But if you're running Sample Manager and Labkey Server on the same database with the same web client, then yes, they will communicate because they're sort of sitting on top of the same database. And lastly, one more question here. Do I own my data? So if they choose to end their subscription, will you have a chance to get a copy of the data? Absolutely. So Labkey's not interested in your data. We are interested in you having complete control and access to that. So you will always own your data. If you choose to end your subscription with us, you will get a complete export and database backup for you to be able to utilize, and that's not something that we'll hang on to at all. It is always yours. Okay, that is all of the questions for now. If you have any other questions for us, please feel free to reach out through the email that will be sent, or through any of our forums or contact information. Thank you guys so much.